isn't it funny how baseball free agency is the exact opposite of hockey free agency? By about 3 p.m. on Canada Day, everybody's up in the Muskoka Lakes having a great time for the rest of the summer, done and dusted after about 7 hours of a frenzy. And we are the exact opposite in baseball. We're just waiting. We're waiting. Aaron Nola signed, but the rest of the big name guys have not. I do think that Ohtani has taken up a lot of the oxygen, as he should. He is a unique player in the history of sport. So from that standpoint, it's well-deserved. But you're exactly right. There's still a lot of really talented players out there who we're probably not talking about as much as we should.
John, you're obviously active on social media, so you're aware that some of the other sports, particularly the NBA Twitter really gets in a frenzy on even the smallest of transactions, smallest of free agency transactions. Baseball's a little bit different. And so my thought with Ohtani, and you would have far more insight than I would, is his camp keeping things tight, which is why there's not been an explosion of speculation the way if his equivalent in another sport, it would literally be nonstop speculation, minute by minute kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a great question, Richard. I think there's plenty of intrigue and questions and curiosity, but we do not have a lot of information. And that is a little bit rare. At least at this time last year, we had seen, there was the video, you may recall, of Aaron Judge meeting with the Giants. And so we at least had something. We had the existence of a meeting that we knew about. As we speak today, that to me has been the biggest vacuum, is we don't even know with which teams and where Ohtani has met with anyone. We don't know his priorities necessarily. You look at different reports that have been shared, and we haven't even really heard a lot from Ohtani publicly in terms of an open media forum since the season itself, partially because of the surgery and the injury, but partially because I think that's the way that he wants it. There, of course, was the relatively well-publicized note where he did speak on MLB Network after getting the MVP and around that time. But notably, there was not really a discussion there about free agency. He was supposed to meet with the baseball writers in a press conference that evening, but due to issues that were unforeseen, it didn't happen. Now, I would say this, Richard and John, we could even have him on the podcast if Shohei wishes to, but I don't think, with all the technology that exists in the world, if Shohei's camp said to us, and I am a member of the Baseball Writers Association of America, if he said to us, hey, we have been able to figure out the technology now, and we'd like to meet with you, we'd like to answer questions of the media, I think we'd be able to get a quorum of reporters to be on that call. There is not a lack of interest on our part to hear from Shohei. And I believe that there is not a lack of suitable broadband to be able to facilitate this conversation. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, if Shohei wanted to talk with us, we'd probably be able to make that happen. It just seems to me, Richard, that he prefers it this way. That is his right. And certainly he's not obligated to talk to us at all. But I do know this, that in the absence of real information in the social media age, we tend to fill the vacuum of information with a lot of speculation and a lot of curiosity. And again, that's Shohei's choice, but I do believe that's where we are right now on the eve of Thanksgiving.
By the way, for the record, Mr. Ohtani, you are always welcome on the podcast. It's an open invitation. We're flexible in record time. We'll even do it on Japanese time if you want to. So we're there for you. Just if you feel that, that tremendously loyal obligation to all your fans in North America, we're here for you. What do you think?
I think that's well said, John. And I'll say this to you as well, John and Richard. I do think the Jays are going to make a legitimate effort to sign him. Now,
come on, John.
Now listen.
You're Richard, flag for this podcast, John.
Richard, here we go. I'll say this. I will stop well short of saying that they're quote unquote expected to be a front runner or among the favorites. I'm not saying that. but I do believe, and I've heard this from multiple places, they're going to make an effort. Now, what does that look like financially? He does, notably, I actually looked this up today. He's got great career numbers at the Rogers Center. And what better place, I'm just going to throw this out there, what better place for baseball's foremost international icon to play, but for the only non-U.S. franchise in Major League Baseball? If we're going to have a global icon, what better place for him than Toronto?
By the way,
by the way, John,
just Richard, just as an asterisk there,
Yeah.
Alex Anthopoulos tried the same speech to Hugh Darvish.
did he?
And it didn't work. So
John, I guarantee. Listen, John Morosi has this whole speech planned for what he's doing, like some KCBS in San Francisco. What a better place to play than San Francisco. Houston. What a better place. So, John, here's the. Listen, it would be incredible, but here, let me counter this to you, okay? And then you can use your insight and knowledge to respond. The one thing that has come out, if anything has come out from his camp, has been like an interest in the Dodgers or the Giants, staying on the West Coast, perhaps returning to the Angels because obviously there's familiarity there. We've heard occasionally, whether it's true or not, like the Cubs, I assume that's based on money and sort of other stuff. And then you have the usual, like, he's always been good at Fenway. You know, he's had a great career there, and the Yankees are the Yankees. So listen, it would be incredible. And quite frankly, it would change the dynamics of how the fan base feels about Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro in like a dime. But where I would counter to you is there's like literally never been an inkling from his camp, if that's even the correct way to phrase it, that he would have interest in Toronto. Let's even say the money, like the Rogers is willing to throw the money. The team is willing to do everything. Like unless I've missed it, I've just never even heard Ohtani discuss Toronto as a, you know what I'm saying, as a destination.
To be fair, Richard, I don't think he's ever, or previous to signing with the Angels, we didn't really think he was going to go to the Angels either.
Very fair.
Part of him, part of his persona is the mystery. And listen, I work hard at my job. I love my job. I love baseball. I love being an insider in baseball. But I will freely admit, I do not know as much about Shohei as I want to. And not to speak for everybody else that does this for a living, I think that's a fairly commonly held opinion. I think with Aaron Judge, to me, the obvious choices were he goes to the Yankees or he goes to the Giants, which is close to where he grew up. The Padres came in late, but there were really 2 or 2.5 possibilities there that seemed realistic for Aaron Judge. And we felt pretty comfortable living in that space of saying, yeah, there's probably 2 or 3 places that make sense here. With Shohei, because he's such a unique person and brand and global icon, he's in a totally different category. And I will say this from the standpoint of the Jays and any other of the franchises that have a fairly sophisticated media platform within their overall offering, such that you might have an over-the-top, and this is, I'm getting very much down to Richard's area of expertise, but the over-the-top ability to sell the rights to be able to watch your games around the world globally. If you're a team that has that ability to do so from a streaming perspective, there's great value there. There's great existential value of what Shohei brings to your organization when you can do that. Now, when you look at the way that, and again, this is Richard's expertise, but you think about timing and the essence of time and when games are happening, it does certainly advantage as a general rule. I've always just had this in my mind for most of the year, and I realize time zones change, etc. But Eastern time to time in Tokyo is usually that, as a rough approximation, 12 hours difference.
12 hours, right, yeah.
When you have, the West Coast teams, if he's playing for the Dodgers or the Angels or the Giants, his game at 7 p.m. local time, 10 Eastern, starts at basically 10 a.m. in Japan. So it's that feeling of a big Ohtani game for a home weekday West Coast crowd, has the feel of the way that we watch Champions League soccer in North America in the Eastern time zone. It's that 10 a.m. It's on at the bar, sports bar, or on at work, and you're watching it there. So for the West Coast teams, from a pure media standpoint, it does make sense. Now, if Shohei's camp looks at Canada and says, wow, the Jays have the largest home market of any team in professional sports, and fans from the Maritimes all the way to Vancouver and up, they all want to watch Shohei around the clock, plus then all the way over to Japan, then you start to build a bit of a narrative to where, from a marketing and media standpoint, again, I defer to Richard on this, you could start to build a credible plan for why it makes sense to acquire a global icon and almost a broadcast entity unto himself.